Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. And I want to welcome you all to 2025 and say Happy New Year. And I hope this is going to be the best year ever for you guys because I feel that this year, all of the things are finally going to start falling into place. And to start off the new year, I'm going to do a series of podcasts featuring my new book called Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. Today in part one, I'll cover some of the highlights from part one of my book. And for those of you who have already purchased your own copy, feel free to follow along and also add your comments to the live chat. And of course, ask me questions arising from the content. And if you do not already own your own copy, the links are for both Kindle and paperback version are featured below in the description. All of my links are featured below. Thank you in advance for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm very happy to announce that channel memberships are now available if you'd like to help support my work and also receive some of my perks. So yeah, today we're going to talk about my book. Here it is. This is the proof copy. If when you buy it, it won't have this band across the middle. It's called Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. I'm very excited to present this information to you today. And I'm going to start off, as I mentioned, with part one. I'm just going to check the comments, see if anyone's here. Sometimes people come in a little later. This is noon Mountain Time, which would be 11 a.m. Pacific. And, you know, sometimes people like to sleep in a bit on Sunday mornings. But they do eventually come. So, yeah, so I want to talk a bit about my book. And the other thing I want to tell you is it is illustrated. It's somewhat illustrated. I'm going to say hi to Tony Ann. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So in case you missed it, we are going to talk about my book, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. And the links are below in the description if you haven't already got your own copy. And as I was just mentioning, it is illustrated. So the paperback is illustrated in black and white. When I get enough sales, I'm going to also publish a hard copy in color. There's quite a few images to help just kind of illustrate my experience. Now, these images are actually AI generated. They're very close to my experience, but as I mentioned right up front, I don't know if you can read that. These are not exact replicas of my experience. So they will give you, though, a good idea, especially in the back here. I have quite a few images so that you can know what to expect when you meet ET. So like in this image here, some ETs look very much like us and some look a little different. But basically, there are no monsters and no scary beings. Everybody is humanoid, very much like us, which makes sense because we're all the same species. We're just different family lines or races. And Tony Ann, oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So, yeah, we're all the same species. Humanoids are created beings. We didn't evolve from monkeys or dinosaurs or birds. that is false information perpetuated by people that don't want you to know the truth. We're divinely inspired. And I get into that quite a bit in my book. So today I want to talk about, I would like to actually read a little bit from my book. And I don't know how far we'll get, but I'll stop and see if you have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to add to it. And I want to say that the first two chapters, the first chapter is sort of an orientation to where I'm coming from, because my experience is not necessarily like anybody else's. There are a lot of similarities. People are now discovering Darius J. Wright. A lot of his experiences are very similar to mine. Um, and when I was having my experiences, it felt very three-dimensional for most of it. And I'll get into why I think I was able to have physicality in trans-dimensional spaces. So I'll get into that a little bit later. So chapter one is clarification, and chapter two, there you go. Chapter two is about my lifetime paranormal experiences. So this didn't just start with ET contact. You know, from a very young age, I was having contact. And I also talk a bit about some of the things that happened to me that I think prepared me for contact. And so, although some of my experiences when I was young were very traumatic and really messed me up, and I bear the scars even today, I'm certainly not unique in this respect. Most of us are traumatized one way or another when we come into Earth, come into our existence here on Earth. And the reason I mention this is because I want people to know that if you've been traumatized, which you probably have been, it's not, that is not the end game. People often think, oh, well, we need to go to therapy and we need to learn how to deal with our past. Well, that might be true, but there is a really positive side to it. Now, I'm not making excuses for the perpetrators of violence or misconduct in any way. None of us should be mistreated ever. But since many of us are, it's interesting to see that there's definitely a link between childhood trauma and paranormal experiences and abilities. So I guess my point is that since the damage is done, we can't do anything about it. We're trying to come to grips with what happened and cope and, you know, get on with our lives. Then why not see that since we had this happen to us, you know, which was no fault of our own, strangely, it opened doors to other abilities that we didn't know that we could have as a result. So I'm not saying it's worth it to get traumatized, not at all, but I am saying that if you've been traumatized, you might be surprised that it opens the doors to paranormal gifts. And I think that is coming more to light. So chapter two, which we probably won't have time to get into today, is about my history. My ancestors, my grandmother had ET contact. My mother had all kinds of paranormal abilities. My father, he was an interesting guy, my birth father. And then I'll get into some of my other paranormal experiences. But today we're going to start off with my contact origin. Chapter one is called Clarification. In case you're wondering what this image is of, when I was a little girl, I was terrified of the dark, and I was terrified at night, and I'd hide under my covers and have them all tucked in under me. And I couldn't breathe because I couldn't put my head above being all tucked in under my blankets. And I was just terrified. And one time a being appeared to me. I don't know if it appeared to me in the three-dimensional and a physical form, or whether it appeared to me, you know, through the portal of my imagination. I don't know, but it definitely appeared to me and let me know that it was there to protect me and that I was safe and that I could go to sleep. And it really helped me a lot. So all through my childhood, I was able to just summon it mentally, I guess, telepathically, although I didn't know that's what it was at the time. and this creature came and guarded me. And it appeared as a fiery griffin. So a griffin is like an eagle head with eagle wings, but the body of a lion. And it was all in flames. It was all flames. So it was really quite spectacular. And I wasn't afraid of it. I don't know, afraid of other things. But I get into that in the book. So I'll just start reading a bit. And Tony Ann or anyone else who joins us, please feel free to ask questions, add your input, anything like that as I go along. So, chapter 1, clarification, contact origin. I've authored this book, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, in order to share with you some of my paranormal experiences and to introduce you to the beings who facilitate exopolitical ambassadorship, intergalactic planetary research, also known as the pre-settlement program, and the intergalactic resettlement program. It's my hope that this information will comfort those with similar experiences and inspire others to open their minds to alternative realities which can benefit humankind. So there's a lot of things that benefit us that we're not taught about in school, we're not taught about in church, we're not taught about the mainstream media. We might stumble across it on alternative media, but I basically expose all the things that I've discovered, and I want to share them all with you. I'm going to say hello to Angel Wings. Hello, Angel Wings. So glad you could make it to the show today. We're covering my book, Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. If you haven't bought your copy yet, it is available. The links are available in the description below. So feel free to stop me and ask questions. That would be fine. So paragraph 2 says, you might be surprised to find out that there are thousands, perhaps millions over time, of us who have had and are having extraterrestrial, which I call ET, contact experiences. In 2017, my spiritual guides told me that it was time to come out of the closet and make public my ET contact, my personal adventures with them, and the things I have learned as a result. There are so many outside of the box experiences that people have. And even though these events are not validated by mainstream society, they do indeed happen nonetheless. And it's time for our voices to be heard. So I'm very excited that this podcast has has attracted people, and almost everybody in the live chat and quite a few people who watch the replay or are listening on the audio have had transdimensional experiences. They may not have clear understanding of it. They may not even have a lot of language to describe it. But like I said, it's my hope that other people will feel, oh my God, thank God I'm not alone. Other people are having these experiences too. And it's not weird. In fact, I believe it's a God given gift. And I also believe it's time for our voices to be heard. My goal is not to convince anyone about my truth, but rather to educate those who are open to this information and to inspire others who may share similar incidences to come out and share their truths. Although many of us experiencers suffer from stigmatization and ridicule when we go public with our adventures, we are finding each other by sharing what we know and find a heightened level of purpose as a result. So I firmly believe this, and it was so comforting for me when I got brave enough to start sharing my experiences. Lo and behold, I started finding other people. In the preface of the book, which I actually didn't read, I met all kinds of people. I'll just mention a few. I met Preston Dennett, Dolly Saffron. I met Elsa Dillon. I met Nancy Thames. I met Ronald and Philip Kinsella. I met Jimmy Blanchett. I met Jeff Selver. All of these beings are out there talking about their transdimensional and ET experiences. So I think that really inspired me. So I'm hoping my book is going to inspire others as well. Tony Ann says, "We're the ETs, good or bad for you. Mine were somewhat neutral." Yeah, I think a lot of our experiences were filtering through our perceptual abilities, and some people perceive it as being really scary and negative, and some perceive it as being positive, and some, like Tony Ann, have experiences that could be described as quite neutral. So again, it's my goal of my book is not to convince you of my truth, not at all. In fact, I wouldn't expect anybody to believe my experience because it's kind of weird and kind of fantastical. But what I do hope is that it helps people to be less afraid of the transdimensional environment. And it helps people who have had experiences to not feel alone, and then there's the greater spiritual teaching from the things that I learned that I've also put in my book, and I've tried to demystify a lot of it. A lot of it has come out before. Some of this information that's in my book has been around for thousands of years. But I try to demystify it and put it into very basic language so that everybody can share in this information. Let me have a look here. So Brian, welcome, Brian. Brian says, I think that the whole UFO presence is about the human ET hybrid program. What are your thoughts? Well, Brian, in truth, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of experiences with hybrids, but funny you should mention it. In the cultures that I experienced, and primarily that was aboard what I call the big ship. The big ship is like a city ship, or what we might consider a mothership. And what I was surprised to find out is there's like millions of beings that live on these huge city ships, and they have no concept for racism. In fact, they've been interbreeding for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years because there's no restriction. And so you may have beings who were born on the big ship. Their grandparents were born on the big ship. They've always lived on big ships or city ships. They've never resettled to planets. Not everybody lives on planets, but those that do settle on planets tend to be of what I would consider mixed race. As I mentioned earlier, I believe that we're all of the same species, but we're different family lines. Like, for instance, on Earth, we're part of humanity. We're part of the human race. Even though we look different, we've got different skin tones and different eye shapes. Some are tall, some are short, some are fat, some are skinny. Like we comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Well, so does ET. And ET has been crossbreeding all along. That's not anything new. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if ET and humans are also crossbreeding. And that would make a lot of sense. I think it builds for stronger race lines, and it often has a purpose. And so, although I don't know a lot about it, I'm not going to speak too much about it. I think it's absolutely likely. Jeff Selver, in his book, talks a lot about the hybrid program. And in his book, he talks about, it's called The Rising by Jeff Selver. And in his book, he talks about a great city that's soon to be established here on Earth, and it will be inhabited and run by the hybrids who are coming to the point where they're starting to become adults, young adults and adults now. And they're going to offer ways of believing, spirituality, technologies that are going to really help us humans here on Earth. Because let's face it, in a lot of ways, our societies have kind of lost their way. So I don't know if that helps, Brian, but that's let's have a look here. Brian also says Susie Hansen describes the walnut-shaped city-sized motherships. I believe this. Yeah, walnut shaped is interesting. I describe the city ships that I have seen as being like fat buttons. So they when they come in contact with other city ships, they have a stacking effect. They stack together above and below. And then there's a lot of cool stuff that happens. I get into that a lot in my book. My book is not really that scientific. It includes psychology, sociology. I get into the culture of these beings, the way they do things. It's just these experiences are just too good for me not to share. Just going to check the chat one more time. Angel Wings says, heavily, I have been heavily protected by angels and dragons, but taken a lot of negative and positive. But I think a lot is for my learning to the training is and how to deal with them. Yep, yep. I don't disbelieve anybody because how do I know? I mean, I don't expect you all to just believe everything I've said in my book. I want you to retain your critical thinking skills. I think that's really important. But I don't judge other people because I know that my experiences are very real and pretty weird, really. Let's have a look here. We've got W33. Hi, W. He says, hi, Karen. Hi, so nice to have you on the show today. Brian says, yes, I have met in person with Jeff Silver and agree with his view on the hybrids. Well, there you go, Brian. I would definitely direct you to Jeff for more information about that because that's not something I actually know a lot about. And Angel Wings says, a lot of us are actually hybrids, though. You know what? I totally agree with that. And in my book, when I get into chapter 2, I'll be talking about my paranormal history. And I believe that my grandmother is actually a hybrid or was a hybrid. And because she was a hybrid, so was my mother, and so am I. But I don't actually identify as a hybrid. So I'm just going to read a little bit more. It says on page 9, it says, and please do feel free to pick up your copy of the book. I'll be talking about the content and reading from it over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I'd love it if you wanted to read along with me and share your insights. So I'm just going to take one more question from Tony Ann, and she says, how do you find out? So I'm guessing, how do you find out whether or not you're a hybrid or not? Um, I think there's many clues, Tony Ann. Like, for instance, do you have paranormal abilities? Do you perceive the future before it comes? Are you contacted by other kinds of beings? I think that is probably the biggest giveaway. But if you were hybrid, you would have what I would call a special purpose for being here on Earth. And that special purpose would be a very spiritual purpose and a very important purpose as well. So again, on page 9, I've written, it is important to note that as this information becomes better known, it changes things on an individual and collective scale. In fact, it changes everything that we have come to believe as truth. And there are powers that be who do not want this transformation to happen. Some people call this reality shift the new earth or paradise earth. Some people call it ascension, and some people call it the new positive timeline. Think of this new reality as an unstoppable force exerting itself and eroding the construct, which until recently was considered to be an immovable object. Something must give, everything will change. The parasite class and their false construct will no longer be tolerated. So let me talk a little bit about what I'm talking about when I use the word construct. So there's actually two constructs with being a human on Earth. The first construct is what we would consider the Earth and the world we live in. And it's got all the animals, birds, fish, water, air, oxygen, storms, sunshine. It's actually a construct. I know that might be hard for some of you to wrap your head around, and as you learn more, you'll understand more. But it's actually, it's called a simulation, but it's doesn't mean it's not real. It's very real. Our body is part of it, everything. And when you hear people talk about how we're spiritual beings having a human experience, that is also part of a construct. But then there's another construct. And the other construct is much like the Matrix. And it came into being probably hundreds of thousands of years ago. All through our recorded history, you can see evidence of it. For instance, you had royals and nobles who made up all the rules, and the peasants were poor and often hungry and were not allowed to go and hunt fresh game for themselves because that belonged to the king. And the whims of the ruling class were made laws to the people, and the people have been pretty much subjugated regardless of their political climate. And that construct starts programming us actually before we're born. And we're born into a system where we're taught certain things are true and real, and anything outside of that is our imagination. Later on, we go to school. That is a very important part of the secondary construct, where we're taught what's real, what's not real, and all the rules around our reality. And as we grow, in our lifetime, we're severely restricted in what we're allowed to know, what we're allowed to do, and what we're allowed to participate in, especially when it comes to our own sovereignty and making decisions on our spiritual decisions or physical decisions or even decisions around our health. This is all being contained within a construct. And the awakening process is when we start to wake up and realize that everything we've been taught is real, is not in our best interest, and we start to discover other ways of eating, taking care of ourselves, managing our health, our mental health, our spirituality. That's the awakening process, and it's pretty unpleasant, but it's a really important part that we have to go through before we actually can start participating in elevating ourselves to have more paranormal experiences. I'm just going to quickly check in with the chat. I think I'm up to date with everybody. Okay, good. So, yeah, so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the construct. So the construct has rulers who decide what we can know, what we can't know. Everything outside of that is considered forbidden knowledge. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that term. Excuse me. So just to continue, page 10, although I had my contact experience about 2014, I had a lot going on at the time, and it is interesting to see how this all unfolded for me. After a severely botched surgery in 2006, I was still recovering from it between 2013 and 2015. I was very ill. The process of getting better was extremely slow, and I was as surprised as anyone that at the same time, I was having these amazing transdimensional experiences. I'm not some kind of a special person. I don't have any unique skills. I'm not anyone of importance, but here we are. And I found out there is a plan in place, and we can put our confidence in that. ET contact happened for me within about a 3-month period of our time. I would simply go to bed at night, fall asleep, and then have all of these amazing adventures. Then in the morning, I would wake up in my own little bed, and I still don't know how for sure if I was initially physically taken and then returned, or whether I experienced non-local physical duality. I'm left with more questions than answers. Back then, back when this was happening to me, I thought at first that I was dreaming, but I strongly suspected that I was not, because when I dream, I have very disjointed storylines that don't make very much sense. When experiencing REM or rapid eye movement sleep, I may have 2 or 3 completely different storylines in one night, and perhaps might not have any memory of my dreams the next night. No two nights were the same, and there is no ongoing theme night to night. But these transdimensional experiences were consistent. They made sense and they followed a continuing storyline. I believe the reason I remember so much contact content and detail is because time is extremely different in the realms that I was able to access. So when I experienced what I experienced nightly for about 3 months felt more like 3 to 3.5 years worth of time. The number of adventures that I participated in was much greater than what would have been possible in a 3-month period. I have since come to understand that I was taken to another dimensional reality where time is experienced differently, and I don't have all the answers, but I will explain as much as I am able. So, yeah, so there's definitely a time dilation when we're visiting, let's just call it visiting transdimensional or interdimensional realms, definitely a time difference. I've heard from some people that they have gone and lived entire lifetimes and then come back and they've only been gone minutes or hours of our time. So I think that's really important to remember. And that's why I was able to remember and talk about so many of my adventures. Ever since 2017, my memories have spontaneously unfolded without hypnosis or regression therapy. They emerge slowly as I become more public with my ET contact, but I do not have full recall. I just remember what I remember, and I did not learn about this phenomenon from any research or literary works. I have reading comprehension issues, and as a result, I have read very few science fiction novels, but I've been a big fan of the Star Trek series, um, but my off-world experiences are nothing like the entertainment that I've seen. I only know about my own adventures, which are not based on anyone else's work. So I think that's an important point here. I didn't have hypnosis or regression therapy. I wasn't a science fiction fan. I didn't read a bunch of books. Like, I didn't get these ideas from anywhere. They all came from my real life experience. And as you can tell, even when I'm reading my book here, I'm not the best reader. I'm going to actually hire a voice actor to read my book for the Audible version that I hope will be coming out in a couple of months. Yeah, so further, since I was in contact with various beings from other realities, I felt it was important for me not to research the stories of others who made similar claims. I wanted my experiences to be pure, authentic, and not influenced by the personal accounts of others. Then, after I went public through social media in 2019, I started to compare notes with others, and I was surprised by the similarities in our experiences. You see, up until finding others with similar accounts, I wondered at times if perhaps I had been delusional. After finding everyone else, I then realized that my experiences were indeed real, since we could not all be having the same delusion. The obvious fact remains that many of us are having ET and or transdimensional experiences, and more than this, it is a perfectly natural phenomenon. That's right. So this is not anything really weird or unique. A lot of people are having these experiences. What I find often happens, and what I did in the beginning, was I would rationalize, oh, I was dreaming, or I must have imagined it, because it didn't fit within my life. It didn't fit within um, my life in society as I understood it. And it just didn't fit. It wasn't something I could talk about to other people. Other people most were not talking about it. And so I rationalized a lot of it. And I think that what will come from reading my book is people will now start to validate their own glimpses into transdimensional realities. glimpses into relationships with other kinds of beings, and we'll slowly start to form our own language and concepts around this. And the whole movement is very much, I believe, going to grow and grow. More clarification, page 11. It is important to note that I do not represent the beings from the big ship and intergalactic resettlement program in any way, and I am not their spokesperson. These beings have no use for a spokesperson since they can make direct contact with us as they see fit. So I think that's really important. Some people have experiences and they want to set up kind of a cult-like organization and they want to be the main spokesperson for extraterrestrials. And to me, that whole concept is ridiculous because they don't need a spokesperson. They can make communication with any of you at any time, um, and let us know directly. They don't need an earthly spokesperson or a pope. It's just not necessary, and I can't see them even wanting that based on their culture. And sometimes this guidance comes across as intuition, hunches, imaginings, dreams, sometimes visual overlays where we will see like an imaginative overlay that sort of sits on top of what we see with our physical eyes. Sometimes it's transparent, you can see both. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it actually overrides what your physical eyes are seeing. That is very interesting. I've never had that happen while I was driving or out in public. That always happens to me when I'm alone at home. So I do believe it's ET directed and or angelic or, one of the other realms. In addition, I only tell what I know and have experienced for myself, and I cannot speak to anyone else's journey. You might be wondering why more people do not share their paranormal contact, and the primary reason is that many of us do not remember these events. Then there is the matter of translating something that seems quite abstract and unreal. Even if I do not have human language for all my ET adventures, I have chosen best as I can to relate my observations, learned concepts, etc., into common English. Unfortunately, English, like most Earth languages, is a very limiting way to communicate, which I believe is orchestrated by the construct to limit our awareness and understanding of things. How do we talk about things and concepts that do not have words? Words are energy, which help to create our reality, and they are a great source of misunderstanding. So I'm sure you've heard other people talk about this. They call it spelling for a reason, because the words we use do exert an influence, an energetic influence over the social reality. And it's like casting spells. And once you delve more into it, you'll learn that it's all connected. And so language is very, very limiting. And of course, none of us were given the concept. Some who have done, a great deal of exploration into different kinds of shamanic healing or ancient hidden scriptures and things like that may have a glimpse into it. But most of us, we were never given the education. So that makes it, again, difficult to talk about our experiences. I've been encouraged by my spiritual guides to provide information best as I can because there are a lot of changes coming and people will need to make up their own minds about the options that they can choose from for dealing with ET contact, higher levels of spirituality, and future world events. The ruling parasite class of the construct will tell you to only believe what they say and that only they know what is best for us, that they will look after us. But by sharing alternative information with each other, we gain the understanding that we have a lot more options and we are much more powerful than what we ever imagined. The ruling parasite class will not tell you that the intergalactic resettlement program may become an option when our physical planet is in crisis or transitioning, making it not safe to live here anymore. So you might be wondering what I mean by the parasite class. Basically, the richest 1% of humans living here on Earth, they make the rules, they have the most power. And I call them the parasite class because everything they have has been stolen and taken from us, the common people. You see, there's a natural law. Everyone born on this earth has a right to certain freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom to be, freedom to express. We don't have to work for our food or our shelter. These things are all provided by virtue of the fact that you were born on this planet. They're ours. But this has been taken, and of course, the whole concept of money and well, we're certainly seeing the effects of that today, guys? I'm just going to check with the chat. I don't see any new comments, but I'll just continue to read here. Planet Earth has a history of death and renewal, and populations have been destroyed by all kinds of disasters, natural and other. I was shown that Earth has been reseeded with humans at least 5 times, and each time the people were preserved and taught ways of survival after these catastrophic events so that humanity could continue. Further, our Earth is alive and adaptive. It goes through geological changes and it evolves. This is true for all what I call Class M planets. Think of life-sustaining planets as being habitats purposefully created by higher, more advanced beings for humanoid settlement and resettlement. So some people may perceive what I've just said as a contradiction, that the Earth has been reseeded 5 times, and each time there is a cataclysm, there has been humanoids who have been preserved so that we don't die out completely. And this isn't actually conflicting information. You see, our planet is millions of years older than what we're taught, and many times it's been reseeded. And the beings that are placed here in this beautiful habitat we call Gaia or we call Earth, they're not stupid beings. They're advanced already. And they create civilizations, they have offspring. As I'll describe later in the book, this is much like Aboriginal groups. They form tribes, they form clans, they spread out, they populate the earth. At some point, they want to go and, I guess, for lack of a better term, they want to explore inner space, which we basically think of as being outer space. They might want to resettle. They might want to take some kind of new way of being or thinking or doing to another area and start over. And this is how we learn. And then the planet would again need to be repopulated with humanoids. So that's why there's been 5 reseedings of humans on Earth. And so this goes on everywhere. The other thing I'll describe later in the book is there are billions, beyond billions, trillions, gazillions of planets out there that have everything to sustain life. They've got water, atmosphere, gravity, birds, fish, beasts of all kinds, you name it, it's all there, but no humanoids. Because as I mentioned earlier in the show, humanoids are actually divine creations, and then we're placed onto these worlds when we're ready, and when it's done very appropriately. There's a lot of scientific information collected. I get into that. I got to participate in what I call the intergalactic pre-settlement program, which involved scientific expeditions to different worlds, and I talk about all that in my book. And I got to visit at least 2 um, populations of beings who had been resettled to see how what that looks like. So one of those populations was a very low tech group of beings. They got everything they needed directly from the planet. And another example I give is of a very high tech community or society that's on a water world, uh, and they kept technology because they needed it. It has more extreme weather patterns, and of course, being a water world, there was times where they actually had to sink their or take their habitats deep below the ocean when the weather was really bad, and be able to rise it back up when the weather was good. So that's very interesting. They also um, were a very scientific community because they interfaced with beings that we would not consider to be humanoid, that live deep within the oceans of that world but are extremely intelligent. So think of it as being a little bit like whales here on earth that have these massive brains, and we don't even have the technology to find out what whales are capable of. We don't even understand them because we're limited in ourselves. So I thought that was interesting. You might like to read about that as well. But getting back to pre-settlement, resettlement, yeah, this is a common thing. This goes on many, many worlds, constantly throughout time. And so I think that's important for people um, to know. I also today through social media, we hear so much about all kinds of exopolitical contact. And it's important for you to know that I am not part of any earth based group. I'm not part of any religion, politic, or philosophy, and I am not part of the secret space program. I know very little about the other ET beings that may now be interacting with humans here on planet Earth. So I just want to be really clear. My experience is my own, not part of any other group, certainly not part of a religious group, politic, anything like that. Brian says, I'm reading your comments out loud because, guys, many people listen to the audio podcasts and don't watch the show. And I want them to hear your comments so that they can get more out of the show. So Brian says, I think you're right about the reseeding of humanity. Do you think the mantid ETs are the ones reseeding beings all over the galaxy? Well, you might be right, Brian. I don't know. That is beyond my scope of experience. But again, it wouldn't surprise me. Space, as we understand it, which is actually interdimensional, transdimensional, and inner space, is a busy place. There's a lot going on with more beings than I could ever count or think of. So that doesn't surprise me. And I don't know. It's beyond actually my realm of experience. Reyes says, thank you, Karen, so much for sharing your super interesting experience and wisdom. I just bought your book and I'm looking forward to exploring it. Wonderful. Rhea, bring the book next Sunday. We're going to get into my paranormal experiences, and then you can follow along and ask questions and make comments and enhance enhance this information, because this isn't just about, oh, Karen Holton wrote a book, everybody should read it. Not at all. What this is about is expanding what we know, consciousness, spirituality, reality, because in this way we can all take part in becoming the change we want to see in this world. And it's time. It's time. So thank you, Rhea. Very, very kind of you. Thank you for buying my book. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping you'll go back to Amazon and give me a review once you've read it. Because Amazon actually, when people just go to Amazon and type in the name of my book, it might show no results. You actually have to go to the bookstore or the Kindle bookstore in Amazon and then do the search. But after I have enough reviews, then the algorithm says, oh, well, I mean, the algorithm doesn't really think. I'm just giving you, I don't know, my interpretation of how it works. It goes, oh, people like this book. We better start showing it up on searches in the main Amazon search bar. And um, they'll put it out there so that other people, when they're looking for information on UFOs or ETs, my book will pop up and then more people will have access to it. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So I'll just keep reading page 12. I also wish to stress that when it comes to the ETs that I have an awareness of, there is nothing to be afraid of. My experiences prove these off-world beings are absolutely benevolent and loving. They have a do no harm mandate, and they do not interfere with humans' free will. They may become involved in our lives when we ask them directly for help and prove that we're serious about being of value to advanced and resettlement societies by altering our lifestyle, beliefs, and patterns of thinking so that we can hold sufficient frequency to facilitate meaningful contact. So, what I mean by that is I know you hear a lot nowadays about raising your frequency, raising your frequency. How do you do that? You raise your frequency by taking really good care of the temple body. We need to get to the point where we realize it's a technology. It's an amazing, brilliantly designed technology and it can give us all kinds of experiences, but we need to take good care of it. We also need to take good care of our mental health and our spirituality and start being open to other frequencies. Some people do this through meditation, some do it from listening to binaural beats and solfeggio frequencies. There's many, many, many ways that we can do this, but all of these things will help to elevate us and make contact possible. And oh my God, this is going to make me cry. The hardest thing about coming back to mainstream reality was to lose that sense of love. Now I can tap into it at any time, but when I get caught up in the politics and what's going on in families and neighborhoods and the politics of nations, and I see how little we know what love really means. Sorry, I can't help it. It's just, yeah, read the book, guys. You'll get a taste of how these other beings live. And then to come back, I only had these adventures for 3 months and then they stopped. And I think the reason they stopped was because it was time for me to understand what had happened to me, what I had learned, and to be able to produce the book. And now the book is out and I'm ready for new adventures. And of course, I will absolutely keep you posted. Oh my gosh, my eyes are all teary now. I need a tissue. But yeah, so I guess that is another really important part of the book is so that you can understand how deeply loved we are unconditionally. And these beings are ready to make contact with us as soon as we're ready. I'm just going to quickly take a look at the comments here. Sorry, guys, putting myself together. I know I'm a silly old woman. I don't know what to say about that. Rhea says, question, I'd like to know your opinion. As a teenager, I recall waking up on the floor or on my desk. Around that time, I recall a couple of visual paranormal experiences. I wonder if they can be connected. Rhea, I'm going to just tell you my honest opinion. Everything is connected. Absolutely. And I think in time, you'll come to see how these things are connected because reality unfolds in a marvelous and really, really wonderful way. Um, yeah, so let's see. Well, we're quickly running out of time. So again, when it comes to ETs, the ones that I have had contact with, there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And fear actually shuts down our transdimensional abilities and our paranormal gifts. And it takes great courage to rise above and to push through. So I just want to say, again, on page 12, think about it. If people from our current Earth societies were able to freely immigrate, sorry, think about it. If people from our current Earth societies were able to freely immigrate to one of the city ships or other planets for resettlement without going through the physical, mental, and spiritual refinement process, we would just move our unnatural programming, dysfunction, and psychopathy onto new worlds and societies. Evildoers will never be permitted to bring the ideations of death and destruction, lies and selfish motivations, and other forms of corruption to new worlds with higher purpose. Until we are prepared to do the inner work to become higher frequency beings ourselves, we and our solar system are under strict quarantine. So, I hope that brings comfort to all of you because, we just can't take our, pardon me for saying, bullshit onto other worlds. These other beings are very advanced. They are at our next stage of development. They have worked their way through. They no longer need dysfunction. They've worked their way through it. They don't even have concepts for war or competition or anything like that. And we need to push through and become kind of a new creation within ourselves. I'm just going to take a moment and quickly play you a very brief 2-minute presentation so that you can get a better understanding of what's in my book, and then I'll come back and take some more questions. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors. Check out my new book available from Amazon bookstores worldwide and read the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. When I tucked myself into bed for the night back in 2014, I had no idea that I would be transported to the big ship, meet many different extraterrestrial races of beings, become well acquainted with their culture, and visit numerous interesting worlds. While away, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. My true life adventures continued night after night, and I had never experienced anything like this before. The first few times that I awoke back at home, I convinced myself that it had all been some kind of a fantastic dream. But while away, I was eating, sleeping, learning, and visiting, all the while experiencing what I perceived as days, weeks, and months. I am so happy to present you with my true nonfiction account of my weird little life and the more important messages from beyond our realm that I have been tasked to share with all of you. It is my hope and sincere desire that I will inspire you to acknowledge your own transdimensional abilities and experiences so that together we can become the change we wish to see in our world. Paperback and Kindle editions are now available at all Amazon bookstores. Go to the Amazon website, select the bookstore or Kindle store, and enter Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors by Karen Holton. The Audible version is coming out soon. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tony Ann says, pretty artwork. Well, I have to confess, I did not do the artwork. It's actually AI generated, but I had to work with AI quite a bit to get the likenesses to be very close to my actual experience, but they're not identical. And I just want to be upfront and let you know that. So we're quickly coming to the end of the show. So I'm just going to read just a little bit more and then take a few more final comments before we end the show today. So I left off by saying that our solar system and we ourselves are under strict quarantine until we advance to the state that we can add to the universe and into transdimensional realms more positively. And then I go on to say, however, when the student is ready, the master appears. This is how CE5 works. And CE5, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, is human initiated ET contact. Depending on how ready, open minded, and willing we are to make sacrifices which allow for our personal evolution and sovereignty, then appropriate contact can begin. It all starts with us. And when we are truly ready to initiate and accept the contact, when we get to the point where we can harmonize with our ET relatives and their ways of life, they will often make contact through sleep dreams, lucid dreams, astral projection, spontaneous knowledge, sometimes called downloads, audio or visual overlays, and even bilocation or consciousness transfer directly to the city ships. In addition, regardless of where we come from, all humanoids are created from the same species, but we experience ourselves as different races. Here on Earth, we call ourselves humans as we are part of the human race. But as far as my ET brothers, sisters, and cousins are concerned, I do not know their racial names, their planet names, or group names, and my ET friends are not from any specific star system. Since we do not communicate in English, they are not familiar with our language-based conceptual frameworks. As I understand them in political terms, these beings separated themselves long ago from various federations of worlds and the like, as they no longer have a need for politics and prefer to operate on an individual and spiritual basis. This is an unorganized, frequency based movement. When we are ready and we reach out spiritually, contact usually commences. On Earth, there are millions of us who share in the transdimensional phenomenon. And I was delighted to find out that I am not alone and that my experiences are not that unique. Not everyone has the same insights, and we tell our stories many different ways. But I see this as complementary rather than competitive. The galaxy is mind blowing, humongous, and diverse, so there is room for all of our experiences and more. At this point, you might be wondering what I have to say about the Ashtar Command, the Federation of Worlds, the United Federation of Planets, the Greys, the Reptilians, the Orions, the Pleiadians, and the Secret Space Program, and many more groups who apparently have contact with Earth people. Since these are all beyond the realm of my experience, I cannot comment on them, but I can speak to the fact that our cosmos is full of diversity and activity, and beings are constantly immigrating and emigrating to and from many worlds. ET does not use concepts like racial prejudice, taboos, war, or even interpersonal conflict. These concepts are from Earth's false matrix programming, and I don't think it is wise to attach these very limiting views onto our ET relatives who are very advanced compared to us. Another point that I would like to make is that we often hear about one kind of physical appearance that come from one planet or small star system with one kind of personality and intention. I must proclaim that this is not true from my experience, and I doubt that it's true for others. Humans come in all kinds, shapes, and sizes, have many different skin tones and eye shapes, and can even look very differently when originating from within the same family or geographical region. The same is true for ET. except they are in much better health, and their looks tend to be more symmetrical. Later in this book, I will describe more about what my ET friends look like and their mating practices and culture, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. People often report their off-world experiences in human terms, but it is best if we lose our human centricism and make room for more accurate depictions and descriptions of ET and their lives. This, however, may not be easy because often we do not carry full recollection of what we have experienced while off-world or transdimensional. So I'll leave it there, and next week I'll get into the false matrix and how it suppresses ET contact, and of course strongly discourages ET contact. And so I think that's an important piece that is rarely, if ever, talked about. I just want to give a shout out to John P. Adventures. Hi, John P. So nice of you. Excuse me. So nice of you to drop in and to say hello. Face the Ace. Hello, Karen. Hello, Face the Ace. So nice of you to join us. Excuse me. My throat's starting to pack it in, but it's time to end the show. So, I'm just wondering if anyone has any last minute comments or questions you'd like me to cover before we close out the show today. And I want to remind everybody I have a show on Wednesday afternoons. It runs 1 hour later. It's also live. And I'm going to have Joan Wyden, who is a very well-known healer, on Wednesday. That would be at noon Pacific, 1 o'clock Mountain, and 3 p.m. Eastern. And she is going to do some readings for you guys. So if you could come back for the live show, the Quantum Guide show on Wednesday, you have a good chance of having a live reading done by Joan, which I think you'll find that very, very interesting. And look, we're getting lots of love from John P. Adventures, and he's saying hi to Face the Ace, and he's this cute. Love you, brother. I was out, saw your video. Brr, brr. Big hug. How are you? Very cold. Oh, it's been really cold here too, guys. And Face the Ace says, thanks, my friend. So what a great group we have today in the group chat. Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoy hanging out with you guys. Love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm just thrilled that so many of you made the time to show up. And again, I hope you all like my book, and I hope that it helps enhance your experiences. I think that is really the important thing. Tony Ann says, thanks. Face the Ace says, awesome. And John P. Adventures says, not sure what he's saying here. Riding, give my bike even more eggy, giggy, giggy, giggy. Not really sure what that means, but it sure sounds positive, John P. Thank you. And Face the Ace says, I will connect to you, Karen. And of course, a whole bunch of blessings from John P. Adventures. If you haven't gone over, check out his channel. Everybody on here has channels. And most, oh, that's what he meant. John P., what he meant was it's cold riding a bike. Yeah, I bet. So, yeah, so check out each other on YouTube. Be kind to each other, love each other. And again, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you Wednesday if you want to have a live reading with my friend Joan Wyden. And we'll see you next week to hear more about Transdimensional. Meet the new neighbors. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.